Hello students, welcome to Legacy IAS Academy. Today we are going to discuss another important topic about ice melting in the region of Arctic and how this ice melt is going to impact us. So let us delve deeper into this topic. Now the reason why we are discussing this topic today is because it has been in news recently as a new report has come that has been published in journal Earth's Future, and it has put a timeline to the impending disaster of shrinkage of summer sea ice in the Arctic region. Though it has been a concern for a very long period of time, but now as per this report, it is believed that if carbon emissions continue at current levels, then summer ice from the Arctic region can disappear completely by the end of this century, that is by 2100. And along with it, due to this appearance of these summer ice, the creatures that live in the polar areas such as seals and polar bears can also disappear. Now let us try to understand that how serious is this phenomena and what is the extent of warming we are seeing in the Arctic region. So if you look at the Arctic, we can see that Arctic region is warming with twice as fast as compared to the other part of the earth, and this phenomena is known as Arctic amplification or Arctic amplification, as the warming rate is quite amplified. Apart from that, the Arctic sea ice is melting at a rate of almost 13% per decade, and over the past 30 years, the oldest and thickest ice in the Arctic has declined by a stunning 95%. And with this rate, it will create a serious problem in not only Arctic region, but throughout the globe, especially related to the climatic phenomena. Now scientists, as per their studies, have given us with two possible scenarios. One scenario is optimistic in nature, that if carbon emissions are brought in check, while other scenarios are pessimistic in nature, that means if emissions are on the global level continues as they are right now. Now in any scenarios, it is believed that by year 2050, summer ice in the Arctic region will thin dramatically. While under the optimistic scenario, it is believed that by the end of the century, summer ice could persist indefinitely, but under the pessimistic scenario, it is believed that summer ice would disappear by the end of this century completely. Now let us try to understand that what are the main reasons why Arctic ice is declining. So the first reason we can understand is, according to the study that is published in journal Helion, it has highlighted that the reason behind the increasing decline in the Arctic sea ice is mainly due to climate change. And with regard to climate change, the most important phenomena that is affecting climate change in the Arctic sea ice is the impact of global warming. Global warming, we all know, is the result of something that we call as increase in the concentration of greenhouse gas effect, and IPCC, that is Intergovernmental Panel on the Climate Change, in its fourth assessment report has clearly stated that it is the GHGs or greenhouse gases that are predominantly responsible for the phenomena of global warming, and thus it can be linked directly to the thinning of Arctic ice. Greenhouse gases, some examples of greenhouse gases are carbon dioxide, we have methane, we have sulfur hexafluoride, we have hydrofluorochloride, and we have perfluorochloride. Apart from that, we also have N2O. So these are the 6 major greenhouse gases that are being emitted due to industries, by the vehicular pollutions and other activities, which has increased considerably since the time of industrial revolution. Now one question that comes to our mind, that is the thinning of ice only an Arctic phenomena or also an Antarctica phenomena, and is there any difference between these two poles of the world? So what we see, that Antarctica, which is in the south pole and the southern hemisphere, and Arctic, which is in the northern hemisphere, are reacting very differently to climate change. Partly it can be attributed to their geographical differences. The reason behind this is, if you look at the Antarctica, it is actually a continent that is surrounded by water from all the sides, while on the other hand, Arctic is an ocean that is surrounded by land from all the sides. And that is why the wind and ocean currents that flow around Antarctic region, this isolate the continent from the global weather pattern and thus keep it cold. In contrast, if you look at the Arctic Ocean, it is intimately linked with the climate systems around it, and thus it is much more sensitive to any changes in the climate, and that is why you also see the warming phenomena is more predominant in Arctic as compared to Antarctic. Now let us try to understand that what could be the after effects of ice melting in the Arctic region. So first is that such large scale changes can attribute to certain weather pattern changes. The first effect we can see is accelerated global warming. Now here pay attention that global warming is causing melting of ice sheets in Arctic. At the same time, if more melting of ice sheets occurs in the Arctic region, it can further attribute or contribute to the global warming. Thus, it can be a kind of positive feedback cycle. It is example of what we can call it a positive feedback cycle. Now, the reason why global warming can change in the global warming can be accelerated is because there can be change in the albedo value of Arctic regions. Albedo is something that if you look at this, Arctic region is covered by ice, snow from all the sides, and ice has a very high albedo value. Albedo value is the reflective properties of any material. So, ice has a very high reflective property, that means almost 85 to 90% of the sunlight that is incident on the ice surface, in this case Arctic region, are reflected back to the atmosphere. And thus, if ice level start to decline in the Arctic region, what will happen? That the sea level will open up, the bottom seabed or ocean bed will open up, will be exposed directly to the sunlight, and these will absorb the sunlight, and due to this the warming will be much more intense in nature. So, that is what we mean that when we say that the changes in the Arctic, changes in the sea ice level of the Arctic can change the albedo value of these areas and can accelerate the global warming process. Apart from this, we can also see more extreme winters due to a southward shift of polar jet streams. We can see this is the polar jet stream that used to flow around 60 degree to 65 degree north of latitude, and it keeps cold air contained within the polar regions. But it is believed that due to change in the ice level of Arctic region, this polar vortex can shift more towards south, and this can bring cold air more southward from the polar areas. Thus, this whole region which was earlier not affected by extreme cold can also get affected, and we can see decline in the temperature, especially rapid decline in temperature, or we can say increase in the severity of winter in the temperate areas like USA, Canada and all the countries located in this latitude. The other after effects of melting we can clearly see in the changes in the sea level. As we know, due to melting of ice, the water level in the sea is rising, and it is observed that global average sea level has risen by about 7 to 8 inches since 1900, and it is getting much more worse. And rising seas especially endanger coastal cities and small island nations, like especially in the Pacific Island, in the Pacific Ocean, in the Indian Ocean we have a lot of island countries, from Mauritius, Maldives, Fiji, and these countries are can be severely impacted, and it will exacerbate the coastal flooding and storm surge in these areas. Also, it is believed that the glacial melt of the Greenland ice sheet is a major predictor of future sea level rise, and as per one estimate, if it melts entirely, if the Greenland ice sheet melts entirely, which is very much possible by the end of this century, the global sea level could rise 20 feet, and that would mean a large number of cities, a large number of countries, especially island countries, will become inhabitable, and that can create extra burden or extra pressure on the resources, Earth's resources, and also it will cause large scale displacement of people. That can also contribute to hunger, poverty and all the attributes. Then the next effect of melting can be seen on the food resources available in the world. So, first of all, due to melting of this ice sheets and due to change in the climatic characteristics, we can see significant damage to the crops on which the global food system depend. And due to the damaging to the crop, we can also see instability in the prices of the crops, and that can cause more vulnerability to the poor population of the world, and especially low and middle income developed countries. They can face severe crisis in obtaining and procuring sufficient food resources. The other after effects of melting is, we can see, this is one positive effect we can say, is that as the ice sheets in the Arctic is melting, the new shipping routes are continuously opening up. For example, we can see from here, earlier these ship routes were not accessible, as due to a very thick layer of ice available in these Arctic areas. The only icebreaker ships could pass through it. Normal ships do not have wherewithal to pass through it. But as the ice start to melt in the Arctic region, this ice will melt, the water will be available, and normal ships can also start passing through these areas. That can contribute to an increase in the trade, but at the same time keep in mind it can also increase in the political tension between various stakeholders and countries that are located around the Arctic region. So, these routes definitely will be tempting and time saver in terms of connecting different parts of the world, but it is also incredibly dangerous. Especially if you look from the perspective of environment, then more shipwrecks or oil spills are very much possible. Like we know Exxon Valdez oil spills, which contributed significantly to the threats of in marine biodiversity, and it can be very difficult and inaccessible for rescue or cleanup crews to reach to that areas and take corrective measures. Apart from that, one severe effect of melting can be seen in the permafrost region of the Arctic. Now, permafrost is something, it is defined as any ground that remains completely frozen, that is below 0 degrees Celsius or colder for at least 2 years straight, and there is a large chunk of area in Arctic which can be classified as a permafrost. But the problem is, due to continuous increase or the rise in temperature of the Arctic region, the permafrost area is melting, and the large number of methane gases which are trapped inside this permafrost in the seas and soil regions of Arctic are being released. And this is a long term natural process, but the methane release is exacerbated by the global warming process. That means, if earth warms at a natural rate, the release of methane will progress at a very slow rate that could not have severe effect on the global climate. But in this time, due to severe global warming, a large amount of methane is being released, and that can actually increase the global warming. As we have seen earlier, that methane is a very major contributor of global warming, as it is a potent this greenhouse gases. So, as we discussed, this can result in a positive feedback cycle where methane itself a powerful greenhouse gas. So, you can understand again same like this, that the melting of permafrost releases methane, the released methane creates further increases further temperature of the atmosphere. This further increase in temperature creates more global warming effect, and due to more global warming, more permafrost will melt and more amount of methane will release. So, this is the perfect example of positive feedback cycle where same thing where these things are going in a vicious cycle. Now, we try to understand the effect of this melting on the life around the Arctic areas. So, actually in the Arctic region in the normal times, when the sea level are intact, when the ice levels are intact, there is seasonal changes we see in terms of movement of winds, atmospheric winds as well as ocean currents between summer and winter. And this movement of ocean currents and wind result in a very rich marine ecosystem, especially in the Arctic region when there is an algal bloom that we observe. Due to this algal bloom, they feed tiny animals. As you can see from this picture here, we have algae. So, higher concentration of algae is a food for microscopic animals that are present in the ocean. These are called as planktons, phytoplanktons or zooplanktons. Then these planktons are food for relatively bigger animals. These are called as krill. Krill is a food for Arctic carp, that is a kind of fish. Arctic carp is a food for leopard seal, that is slightly bigger amount or bigger size of fishes are there, and then seals are the one that feeds the polar bear. So, this is the whole marine food cycle, a food chain or food web we can say. So, due to changes in the climate of Arctic region, there will be changes in the algal production, and this any changes in the algal production can cause wide ranging effect in the whole food chain or food web of the Arctic region. And that is why the irregular topography also help create layers. Apart from that, we can say that apart from creating food resources in the Arctic region, the topography which is currently present in the Arctic region, that there is a large amount of ice and everything is available. So, it create layers that we can say home for the seals and ice caves of polar bear during the winter, and if the ice sheets start to melt at a rapid rate, these home and cave for these animals will not be available, and that can also cause a decline of their population. Then loss of ice and melting permafrost spells trouble for polar bears, walruses, Arctic foxes, snowy owl, reindeers and many other species. So, now coming to the next point. So, what will happen as these species of animals are affected, so too are the other species that depend on them in addition to the people. So overall we can see a global ramifications as there is significant changes in the Arctic food wave or food pattern. There will be changes that we will see in the whole food wave or food chain across the globe. Now, if the year-round ice goes away, entire ice-dependent ecosystem will collapse and something new will begin. However, some scientists believe that just decline in the population of these animals cannot be seen as something an end in itself, a bad end in itself, but something new cycle can begin, and it is believed that new fishes or new algal species may come up from the North Atlantic, but it is not yet clear if they could survive there year-round. Now, coming to what should be our reaction and what is the way forward to tackle this problem. The first is we need to limit the increase in global temperature, as it is our best chance of securing a safer future for all, preventing even more damaging consequences than we are already observing. Second is by keeping the rise of the atmospheric temperature or global temperature to or up to 1.5 degrees Celsius, we can prevent the worst effects of climate change, and that is indeed the goal of Paris Climate Summit, that is Conference of Parties meeting that happened in Conference of Parties meeting 2020, COP20. Apart from that, we can also try to help communities and help wildlife adapt to the changes that already is occurring or cannot be reversed, that is very much essential at this point of time. So, I hope you enjoyed this session. That is all for today. Thank you very much.